Alright, we'll start off real quick with showing you how to remove the foam off the frames. Got some brand new white frames here. Just gonna get my water really hot for my sink. You know, my sink's pretty good. It gets that level of hot where it just starts to burn the crap out of your hands and you don't want to touch it. Ends up working out great. You want it pretty warm to help loosen up some of the glue. Just let the foam soak up some of that hot water. Usually it takes about a minute, but you'll really notice the hot water will loosen up that glue. And you can get the foam off in one nice solid piece for the most part. I personally don't mind leaving a little bit of the foam on the frames because I think when you go back to putting the foam back on the frames, you can put a little bit of glue on the leftover. That actually, one, helps you kind of put it back in the same right spot, and two, I think the extra little bit of on there just, you know, gives your glue something to stick to besides the nice slick plastic. Always start at one of the ends though, get it nice and hot. It's been about a minute now, so it should be loosening up. Just gonna take it, we're just gonna, hopefully you can see, just gonna pinch it, just ever so slightly. Add more hot water, and you just keep doing that. Take about 2 or 3 minutes, but you'll slowly pinch off. Like you'll see, I'm getting 95% of it off. There's just a little bit left on there. Like I was saying, that's not the worst thing ever. When it's glued back on, you'll never tell, and that kind of gives you a pattern of where the foam was resting at, as well as gives you a little something to rub your glue on for the glue to adhere to, besides just that really slick plastic. So don't be nervous. Keep this side nice. That's the side touching your face. This side doesn't matter too much. That's going to be covered in glue to get it back on the frame. As you see, especially as the piece starts getting bigger, it just gets easier and easier. Even less and less as the foam is sticking to it still, and I'm getting more of it up. So let the hot water do most of the work. Just little pinches, little inch by inch. I have lots of practice doing this, but even without the practice, you should be able to feel if you're doing it right. You'll feel if most of the foam is coming off in one piece. If it starts feeling a little rough, a little tough, hot water, let it do the work.
And get right up in that corner, pull it back, and just pinch, pinch.
Luckily that foam really sucks up the water, so it traps in that heat, and that heat really makes that glue release fairly easily. Almost there. Another 10 seconds, and you should have this off of there. Voila. Got most of it off. Like I said, got a little bit left on there, not the worst thing. Now this is the good side, no problems. That's the other side. Still looks good in my opinion. And I'm just gonna hang up the foam to dry now for a little while. Just hang it up, let it air dry, and I'll be working on the rest of the frame the rest of the day, getting it tied up. Alright, so next step is you want to get these cleaned up a little bit and prepared to go on the die. These are pretty good looking, but take a little bit of fingernail polish remover is the easiest thing I find. Some people like Clorox wipes and stuff like that. And you're just going to give everything a good wipe down. What it's really going to do is help get rid of that clear coat a little bit, so that way the dye can get through easier. Take your fingernail polish, a little bit of abrasive tissue, wipe it down good for about a minute or two. It's going to help get some of that clear coat off, so that way they accept the dye a little easier. Some people don't do this stuff, but I think it helps. Otherwise, there's been times where I didn't do this, and I noticed basically some of the clear coat was still stuck on while it was dyeing, and it kind of just once it peel off, then it looked nasty after it's been dyed. Nothing too crazy. I'll put a couple more minutes in these. Okay, ready to dye. Here, I'll show you guys another one of my tips. I like to use a little highlighter, put on there, make my markings, kind of give me a little guide, make sure I like all the placements before I really start doing it. Just a green little Sharpie. Nice because you can just wipe it off with your finger. You don't like it, wipe it off real quick, redo it. Just got this hot glue done from Walmart. Sure Bonder. It's high temp. Prefer using the high temp glue. It doesn't melt when you put it in the hot dye mixture as easily, so it holds on there a little bit better. It's designed for plastics and metals and woods anyways. The low temp's more for fabrics and stuff like that. But we'll get started here in just a minute. Waiting for it to warm up. Alright, got the first layer of the hot glue on there. I find it easiest just to do vertical lines first. That way it gives it a little bit of time to dry. You try to do both the lines at the same time, the vertical and the horizontal line. The first line hasn't cooled off enough, you end up messing it up. So I go through, I get all the vertical ones exactly how I like it, find one I don't like, I peel it off, and then I just do it again. I'm going to start doing the horizontal lines now. Nothing too crazy. I literally just take it and I add a little bit to the side on each one. And just do a little bit on each side. Now, the one thing I've run into problems when doing this that you have to be careful of. There can be a little air bubble that forms in between the two lines. Basically, if you try to just do a straight line all the way across, all on one line at one time, little air pockets can form underneath and you'll end up getting not a complete cross basically. It'll look a little dotty and not as sharp as we're looking for. So I do each side, just a little dab on each side. Just like that. Do it right, you should get a little cross looking, just like that. Now I'm just doing these real quick. I'll go through and I'll make sure I have them exactly how I want here before I put in the dye. Just want to show you a little bit of how we do this. Teach you a few of the tricks I've learned. Now the only other thing to be wary of is that you don't want to use too much glue either. The problem with too much glue is you leave a little bit up on top. When it's all built up, when it's in the dye solution, you're just leaving yourself with more glue that can basically melt and end up re-sticking to another spot, which is just going to end up, you know, leaving you with not very crisp crosses, which is what this is all about. I learned that on my last one I used a little bit too much glue, and it ran in the heat. Also just didn't come out exactly as I would have hoped. That's just a nice little example for you guys right now. I'll come back in a little bit and we'll be ready to put these in the dye solution once I get all this hot glue perfect. Alright, finished up with all the hot glue. Got my crosses on there looking sharp, looking good I think. So the thing to keep in mind, two things when we're doing this. Got my dye solution right there. Dye we're using. So two things to keep in mind. First thing is, one, you don't want the solution to be too hot. If it's too hot, you're just increasing your chances of the hot glue melting inside the solution when you're dyeing it and running and just not coming out with very clean and crisp crosses. So keep that in mind. I usually bring it up to a nice boil, turn it off, leave it alone for like 15 minutes and then come back. That seems to be usually a good temperature after it's cooled off for about 15 minutes. I got my big pot here because, well, I had to do an F8 as well, bottom, and it would not fit in my usual size pot. So had to use the big pot. Because of that, we had to use a little bit extra dye than what I normally use, but using the same pot and the same mixture I already had, so that way hopefully they match the F8 pretty closely. Usually about 3 or 4 tablespoons is good for a frame of the dye synthetic, but since we have such a big pot, I'd probably get closer to 6 to 8 tablespoons. Easier to start off with less dye. If it's not quite as dark as you want, you can add more dye to it while you're doing it. That's what I've learned in my experience. You can always go lighter to darker, but once it's dark, you can't make it any lighter. So you can always take your time, add dye to it, make it darker over time, get the color just exactly right. Like I said, you can go from light to dark when it comes to dyeing, but you can't go from dark to light. That brings me to the other thing to keep in mind is then when you're doing these crosses, make sure before you put them in the solution, I always give each little spot a touch, making sure that it's actually on there good. If you can move it at all, or if you feel that it's flexing and moving up at all, that means it's not stuck to it very well. So you'll probably want to redo it. If you don't take your time and redo it, those little pieces, the water will get underneath, it won't be a complete cross, it'll look a little funny, it'll be misshapen, it'll look like a penis instead of a cross, something funny like that. So take your time, take a second, move all of them with your finger, make sure they're all on there good. I already went through, redid all the ones I messed up on this and have it looking pretty good, have it looking ready. So yeah, I'm about to get it put in the solution. I just use a coat hanger and hook it into it. Try to do limited motion when you're putting it in and out of the water. The more you move it around, the more you're increasing your chances of knocking off some of the glue while it's in there and knocking off all that hard work. So be gentle with it. Now I got it all the way fully submerged inside of there. Check it about every 2 or 3 minutes. Usually takes about maybe 10 minutes tops to really get it. But you know, it all depends on your temperature, all depends on how much dye you use, all depends on how well you cleaned it. Lots of different factors. If it's newer material, sometimes it'll dye faster. If it's older material, sometimes it'll dye slower. If it's just certain material will dye super quick, certain material will dye super slow. It's a random process. I've put lots of stuff in dye solution, been doing this for years, and there's no real consistency for how long it takes. So just take your time, get it the color you're looking for. All right, just got it out of the dye solution, was in there for about 10 minutes. I just bring it over and hose it down, cool it off, wash off any extra dye. And let's see. Just like that, it pops off. Got our crosses. Perfect. Alright, got these all cleaned up. Got the little glue pieces off. You can see all the parts that had the glue on. Stayed nice and white. And now it's ready for the second dye. So like I was saying before, you can always go from light to dark when it comes to dyeing, but you can't really go from dark to light. Right, same concept applies when it comes to picking your colors. So your first color that you dye it in should be the darker color. So that way when it goes in the second dye solution, it doesn't change colors at all. I use the royal purple for the first color, which is darker than our second color. Super pink. Got the solution already. About to drop it in. Probably take about 10 minutes like the one before, but just remember, it's probably good to check on it every like 2 minutes until you get the color that you want. So that way you don't dye it too dark and can't really go back. Alright, let's see how these turn out. Alright guys, here with the final step, putting the foam back on. Not too hard, pretty simple. I just use Super 77, spray it into some cardboard, so I got a nice little liquid there. Use a couple of Q-tips as basically paint brushes. I'm just gonna go around and I'm gonna put the glue where I want the foam to stick. Pretty simple, really. Sorry about all the noise outside. They're like jackhammering some random shit. Nothing too crazy. I start with the nose piece. See if I can get my camera set up. That should work. Start with the nose piece. Once you get that one secured in there pretty good, usually will stay in place pretty well. I'm gonna take my Q-tip, dip it in a whole bunch of glue, and go over, put a nice healthy coat. Definitely want to make sure the nose and the edges have the most glue on them to keep it from peeling up. Glue on there. Now the nice thing about this glue is it takes a few minutes to dry, so you do have a few minutes to get it just right. Pinch the nose and you'll see a little bit of a lip this where the glue's supposed to go and then where it's supposed to touch your face. So try to get on there as best as you can. Really not too bad though. And then to make sure it stays on there nice and secure, I usually kind of apply pressure for about 30 seconds. Give that glue a little bit of time to try to set so it's not shifting all over the place on us. And then simply just continue to put the glue on all the way around the frame. Nice and easy. See though, now we got our nose on there pretty good. Start lining up the rest. Making sure you got it just like you want. Not too far to the right, not too far to the left. Perfectly made. And I'll finish these up. Just want to give you guys a quick little video on how to put the foam back on the frames when you're done dyeing. That's pretty much the whole process, guys, on how to dye your own frames at home. Hope you enjoyed my video. Thanks for watching.